Hey there, and welcome back to our quiet corner of the world. Tonight, we're doing something a little bit different. Something that might sound like a paradox, a whisper of a secret you've been told to run from since you were a child. Because tonight, we're not just walking into the woods, we're walking right up to the velvet ropes of nature's most infamous pharmaceutical lab, the world of poisonous mushrooms. I know. Your first thought is probably the skull and crossbones, the immediate image of certain death, right? And that's fair. We're taught to respect, even fear the toadstools with their bright caps and dangerous allure. But what if I told you that the very chemistry that makes these fungi deadly is the same intricate, life-altering power that modern medicine is desperate to unlock? It's a classic case of dual nature, a kind of biological Jekyll and Hyde, where the poison isn't the whole story. It's just the alarm system. And once you learn to read the fine print on that alarm, you discover immense potential.
Completely reword the original text while preserving its core meaning and structure. The text should be fresh and original, as if written from scratch. Just think about the most iconic one, Amanita muscaria, the beautiful, almost cartoonish fly agaric with its scarlet cap and white spots. It looks like it should be in a fairy tale, and in a way, it is. But its story isn't just about ancient shamans or reindeer having a wild time. It's a profound lesson in molecular complexity. This mushroom, which is toxic in its raw form, carries compounds like ibotenic acid and mucimol. Now, ibotenic acid is the scary part. It's a neurotoxin. But mucimol? That's where the magic starts, because mucimol is a potent GABA-A receptor agonist. We're talking about a compound that interacts directly with the calming systems in your brain. And that's exactly why pharmaceutical researchers are obsessed with it. It's not about getting a high. It's about understanding deep, complex neurological pathways for things like chronic pain, anxiety disorders, and maybe even severe insomnia. It's crazy when you think about it. The very thing you'd call a poison is a potential key to profound rest and calm.
Completely reword the original while preserving its core meaning and structure. The text should be fresh and original, as if written from scratch. And that makes you wonder about the whole fungal kingdom, doesn't it? We've barely scratched the surface. You see, when a mushroom develops a toxin, it's not doing it to be malicious. It's doing it to survive, to keep insects and bacteria from eating it before it can spread its spores. That toxin is a defensive bioweapon, a highly specialized chemical compound developed over millions of years of evolutionary pressure. It's a miracle of tiny subterranean chemistry. And if it's powerful enough to ward off a bacterium or paralyze an insect, it's powerful enough, in a measured, isolated dose, to influence human biology in incredibly precise ways. It's all about the dose, and more importantly, the purification.
Completely reword the original while preserving its core meaning and structure. The text should be fresh and original, as if written from scratch. Let's dive a little deeper into the true silent killers, the ones that terrify mycologists, like the infamous death cap, Amanita phalloides. This one is brutal because it carries amatoxins. These toxins are the perfect weapon because they attack your liver and kidney cells by inhibiting an enzyme called RNA polymerase II. Without that enzyme, your cells literally can't create the proteins they need to function, and they die. It's a nightmare. But here's the absolute twist, the thing that shows you the real potential. Scientists are finding that the precise mechanism that makes amatoxins so deadly, their ability to target and kill fast-dividing cells, is being explored for use in antibody-drug conjugates, or ADCs. Imagine linking that precise cellular killing mechanism to an antibody designed to specifically hunt down a cancer cell. The cancer cell takes the bait, swallows the toxic payload, and only that cell dies. That's what we call precision chemotherapy, and it's being researched using this deadly mushroom's worst compound. It's truly a secret weapon hidden in plain sight, you know?
Speaking of precision,
let's talk about the world of anti-inflammatories. You'd never think of a toxic mushroom as something that cools the fire in your body, but many fungi produce compounds that are potent immunosuppressants or anti-inflammatory agents. We're talking about compounds designed to disrupt biological processes. If a compound is strong enough to cause a reaction, it's strong enough to stop one too. For instance, the psilocybin family, which we'll get to in a moment, is being studied for its incredible anti-inflammatory properties that seem to be totally separate from its psychoactive effects. They're finding that these compounds can quiet down the inflammatory storm that underlies everything from chronic depression to autoimmune conditions. It's not just about a temporary mood lift, it's about a deep biological reset. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most remarkable stories in all of pharmacology. And it all starts with a fungus that is certainly not poisonous, but whose story sets the stage for everything we're discussing. Penicillium. We're talking about the mold that gave us penicillin. Before that discovery, a simple scratch could lead to a deadly infection. Penicillin is a fungal chemical weapon against bacteria, and it fundamentally changed human history. But why stop there? The fungal kingdom is locked in an evolutionary arms race with the bacterial world, meaning every mushroom, toxic or not, is constantly developing new, unique antibiotics. Some research is now focusing on the lesser-known, often poisonous fungi, specifically because they contain novel antimicrobial compounds that bacteria haven't yet learned how to fight. When we talk about antibiotic resistance being one of the biggest threats to global health, we realize that the solution might not be in a lab, but buried right under our feet, wrapped in the warning label of a toadstool. It's an untapped gold mine, and we're just beginning to dig.
But here's the real twist when you look at the less common suspects. Take the genus Cortinarius, the webcaps. They're often fatal because they contain a nasty toxin called orellinine, which causes kidney failure. It's irreversible damage, which is terrifying. But scientists are isolating unique terpenoids and other specialized secondary metabolites from these groups. These are complex molecules that often have unusual and extremely specific biological activity. They might not be used directly, but they serve as the perfect template, a molecular blueprint that chemists can mimic or modify to create entirely new drugs. So the poison mushroom gives us the idea, and the chemists do the fine-tuning. It's like stealing the villain's schematic to build a superhero gadget. You see, the poisonous fungi are the most chemically innovative species out there because their lives depend on it. They can't run away, so they have to create a chemical wall. And that wall is what we want to study. We're talking about things like potential treatments for Alzheimer's disease by looking at compounds that influence neurotransmitter breakdown, or incredibly potent antiviral agents that could potentially stop something like the flu, or even new emerging pathogens. It's all in the complexity of that toxicity. It's amazing, isn't it?
And that sense of amazement, that realization of hidden chemical power, isn't actually new. While we're here in the 21st century dissecting the molecular blueprints of Cortinarius in sterile labs, using fancy mass spectrometers and digital models, let's stop for a second and wonder about the people who came before us. Did they too sense this immense power? They absolutely did. Long before we figured out what RNA polymerase II even was, ancient cultures were locked in a much more intimate, terrifying, and profoundly respectful dance with these same deadly fungi. This takes us right out of the lab and straight back to the campfire, to the roots of ethnomycology, where the line between medicine and magic was often the thickness of a single slice of mushroom cap.
You have to imagine those first brave or maybe desperate human experiments. Think about a tribal healer or an ancient shaman looking at the vibrant, almost alien colors of a toadstool. They learned through painful trial and error that must have cost countless lives that some fungi killed quickly, others made you incredibly sick,
and a very few could actually change your mind or, critically, relieve agonizing pain when used in minute quantities. This wasn't science as we know it. It was dangerous applied observation. They were, in a brutal empirical sense, the world's first pharmacologists. And this knowledge wasn't written down in textbooks. It was passed down in whispers, in complex rituals, and in guarded secrets, precisely because the difference between a cure and a corpse was so small. One of the most profound and terrifying examples of fungal power in human history comes not from a cap and stem mushroom, but from a parasitic fungus that attacks rye and other grasses, ergot, or Claviceps purpurea. Now, ergot is historically a poison of civilization. When infected rye was baked into bread, it caused epidemics known as St. Anthony's fire, leading to horrific symptoms, burning sensations, convulsions, and even gangrene that would literally cause limbs to drop off. It was a medieval horror show fueled by a fungus. But here's the twist. The deadly alkaloids in ergot, the ones that cause this mass suffering, also contain compounds like ergonovin and ergotamine. In the hands of midwives and early doctors, these compounds became essential for obstetrics. They discovered that a tiny, controlled amount of ergot could induce contractions and stop postpartum hemorrhaging, saving untold numbers of women's lives. It's the ultimate paradox. The same fungus that brought on mass death and madness in one context became a life-saving tool in another. The poison was always there, waiting for the right knowledge to unlock its therapeutic power. And that historical duality extends right back to the iconic Amanita muscaria we mentioned earlier. For millennia, indigenous peoples across Siberia and Eastern Europe saw this mushroom not just as a source of toxicity, but as a bridge to other realities, often using it in complex shamanic rituals. They didn't understand muscimol as a GABA agonist, but they intimately understood its powerful depressant and dissociative effects. They developed methods, sometimes involving the detoxification process within reindeer or using the compounds topically, to harness its power while minimizing its severe physical discomfort. This wasn't just recreational use. It was applied medicine for spiritual diagnosis, pain relief, and endurance. It shows us that humans have always recognized the profound influence these fungal compounds have on the core operating system of the brain, treating these toxins as highly specialized tools, not just threats. You see, the ancient wisdom often centered on external or topical applications to minimize systemic toxicity. They used fungal compounds, including some from toxic species, as poultices to treat wounds, kill external parasites, or alleviate localized pain. Take the example of certain bracket fungi, or even some mildly toxic Boletus species. While consuming them was risky, grinding them down and applying them as an antiseptic dressing meant leveraging their powerful antimicrobial defenses, the very weapons they evolved to fight bacteria to help a human wound. They were essentially using the mushroom's own survival strategy for their own benefit. It's a beautiful, if dangerous, example of coevolution. It's like the ancients were selectively borrowing the fungi's chemical wall bit by bit for immediate relief. This long history of trial, error, and specialized use means that every single toxic mushroom species that exists today carries not only a chemical potential for future oncology or neurology, but also a deep ethnobotanical fingerprint. They hold cultural keys. Modern researchers are now frantically collaborating with indigenous communities globally, recognizing that the knowledge of how to process, detoxify, or apply minute amounts of specific toxic fungi might be the critical step needed to move a compound from the poison column to the therapeutic template column. The past isn't just history. It's a vital, living database of successful, if risky, human interactions with nature's most dangerous chemists. And as we transition from this ancient wisdom back into our modern high-tech labs, we realize we aren't pioneers starting from scratch. We are inheritors of a knowledge that's been refined and whispered for hundreds of generations.
And that brings us right back to the cutting edge of the problem we started with, only now we see it through the lens of that ancient wisdom. We talked about how the ancients borrowed the fungi's chemical wall to treat a local wound, using that powerful antimicrobial defense. Well, if they were borrowing a single brick, modern science needs to borrow the whole blueprint, because we are in a crisis, the crisis of antibiotic resistance.
Think about it. Penicillin, our miracle cure, is losing its power. We've used up our easily accessible chemical arsenal, and the bacteria, those fast-evolving tiny chemists, are winning the arms race. They're developing resistance faster than we can invent new drugs. These are the superbugs, and they terrify scientists globally. But where do you look when the standard library of compounds runs dry? You look where the evolutionary war is fiercest. You look to the fungi that have been fighting this bacterial battle underground for 1 billion years. You look to the poisonous ones.
Why the toxic ones specifically? Because a mushroom that has to invest so much energy into creating a deadly toxin, like amatoxin or orelenin, is a chemical powerhouse. It's got a whole complex factory running. And often, those toxins are just one part of a multifaceted defensive strategy that includes totally novel, complex antimicrobial peptides. These peptides are highly sophisticated molecules that punch holes in bacterial cell walls in ways our current antibiotics can't. They're the chemical weapons of the future, hidden within the fungi we currently label as just poisonous. Researchers are now deliberately hunting for new compounds in species that are known to be toxic, not for the toxins themselves, but for the other protective chemicals they make. We're talking about extracting unique proteins and secondary metabolites from fungi like the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, Omphalotus illudens, which contains the nasty compound illudin S. While illudin S is toxic, its basic structure has inspired the development of potential anti-cancer drugs, and its fungal relatives are showing activity against drug-resistant bacteria. The message here is clear. The most dangerous fungi harbor the most unique, unexplored chemistry because they have to be better defenders. Their toxicity is a sign of their chemical genius. This journey, from the shaman's fire to the supercomputer, brings us to the end of our exploration tonight. We started with fear, the simple warning, don't touch the deadly mushroom. But as we peel back the layers, from the precise cell-killing mechanism of the death cap to the ancient wisdom of the ergot midwives, we find ourselves at a deeper, more hopeful realization.
The poison wasn't a mistake. It was a potent promise. The fear we felt was just the recognition of immense power, a power that, once understood, is the key to our healing. The fungi, in their silent subterranean lives, have been fighting our wars for us, developing the compounds that define life, death, and medicine. When we look at that vibrant toadstool now, we don't just see a warning. We see a pharmaceutical factory, a repository of history, and the quiet, potent hope for the future of human health. Thank you for taking this journey into the paradox with me. It truly shows us that sometimes the greatest cures are hidden in the places we're told never ever to look. Sweet dreams.